During a fun, light-hearted interview, Fallon suddenly asks Keanu Reeves one deeply personal question he never saw coming. The unexpected moment rips open an old wound, and the usually calm star breaks down in tears on live TV. What follows is a raw confession about love, loss, and the pain he's carried in silence for years. The night everything changed. I still remember the way the studio air changed that night. One moment we were laughing at dumb rehearsal jokes, and the next, every eye in the room was locked on Keanu Reeves, waiting for an answer none of us saw coming. I was sitting just off camera with a stack of cue cards in my hands, the bright blue Tonight Show backdrop glowing like a fake midnight behind Jimmy's desk. It was supposed to be a simple segment: promote Keanu's new action movie, play a silly game, end with a funny story and a standing ovation. The kind of night TV producers like me can run half asleep. But even before the cameras rolled, I could feel something different in him, like the way an action hero looks calm on the surface while quietly bracing for the next hit. Backstage, Keanu had arrived alone, no loud entourage, no drama. He wore a black suit that should have made him look untouchable, yet he moved through the narrow hallway with almost shy shoulders. When one of the interns dropped a box of cables at his feet, he didn't step over it like most stars do. He crouched down, helped her gather every tangled wire, and asked her name as if it actually mattered. I watched him carry half the box himself to the control room, while security argued that he didn't need to. That tiny, awkward moment shouldn't have meant anything, but it stayed with me, glowing quietly in the back of my mind. Out on the stage, the audience roared when Jimmy shouted his name. Keanu walked in with that familiar half-smile, the one that says he's both amused and slightly embarrassed that people love him this much. They shook hands, did the playful shoulder bump, and Jimmy started with the usual jokes. How many times Keanu had almost died doing his own stunts, how the new movie had more explosions than actual dialogue. The crowd ate it up, especially when Keanu mimed an over-the-top slow-motion dive to avoid an invisible stunt car, rolling across the carpet like a kid on a living room floor. The band hit a dramatic sting, and everyone laughed. For a moment, it really did feel like just another late-night circus. Then came the action bit we'd scripted: Stunt School with Keanu. A crew member rushed in with foam swords and rubber nunchucks. Jimmy put on oversized safety goggles for no reason at all, and the two of them stood in front of the desk like kids in a martial arts class gone wrong. Keanu showed him a simple move, step, block, twist, then slowed it down so Jimmy could follow. Of course, Jimmy exaggerated every step, almost tripping over his own feet. The audience screamed with laughter when Keanu pretended to get knocked out by a wild swing, dropping to his knees with Oscar-level drama. It was fun, chaotic, and loud, the kind of TV moment that trends for a few hours and then disappears under the weight of tomorrow's memes. But even in the middle of the laughter, as Keanu helped Jimmy up and bowed like a respectful student, I saw something. It was small, hidden in the fraction of a second when the cameras cut to the cheering crowd and our director yelled into my headset. Keanu's face relaxed, his smile falling just a little too far, like a mask slipping between takes. His eyes drifted to the floor, then to the first row where a couple sat holding hands, fingers intertwined. Something about that simple, unremarkable show of affection hit him harder than any foam sword. His shoulders tightened, and for the briefest moment, he looked less like an immortal action star and more like a man trying not to remember something. We went into the interview segment. The chair creaked lightly as Keanu sat back down, smoothing his jacket, his game show grin back in place. Jimmy shuffled the blue cards I'd written only hours earlier, questions about fight choreography, funniest on-set injuries, fan encounters at airports. He fired them off with perfect timing. Keanu told a story about a stunt gone wrong and another about getting recognized in a supermarket by a grandma who thought he was that nice boy from that computer movie. The jokes landed. The audience applauded at all the right spots. Everything on the monitors looked perfect. But where I sat in the dim side of the studio, I noticed Jimmy glancing up from the cards more often than usual. He's a comedian, but he's also a watcher, someone who can read a room the way musicians read sheet music. Between laughs, his eyes kept drifting back to Keanu's face, searching for something beneath the practiced calm. At one point, while the cameras framed a wide shot of the desk, Jimmy slid the remaining cue cards slightly to the side instead of pulling the next one to the front. That was my first warning. Something unscripted was coming. A hush rolled through the studio during the next applause break. The band played a soft riff, and our floor manager waved the "Rap Soon" signal from behind the cameras. 2 minutes left. All we needed was one more light question, one more funny clip, and we were done. My fingers tightened on the backup cards just in case. Through the glass of the control room, I saw our director look at his own clock and nod. Everything was on schedule, perfectly controlled, exactly as planned. Then Jimmy glanced at the teleprompter, hesitated, and did something I had never seen him do in all my years working there. He deliberately ignored the next joke and looked straight into Keanu's eyes instead. The crowd, sensing a shift, grew quiet without being told. The band's riff faded into a single sustained note. Even the cameras seemed to lean in a little closer, their red recording lights burning like curious eyes. "You know," Jimmy said, voice softer now, "we've all seen you do these insane fight scenes and impossible stunts. You always come across like the toughest guy in the room. But when you helped that intern backstage earlier, it felt like there's a whole different side of you people don't really see on camera." Keanu blinked, thrown off the rhythm of rehearsed answers. He shifted in his chair, fingertips brushing the edge of the desk. "Well," he said with that quiet half-laugh, "I just try not to be a jerk." The audience laughed politely, but the sound was thinner than before, like everyone knew something heavier was hiding under the joke. Jimmy leaned forward, elbows on the desk, ignoring the flashing signal from the floor manager telling him to wrap it up. His eyes didn't leave Keanu's face. "Can I ask you something?" Jimmy said. "That's not on the cards." In my headset, the director cursed under his breath, and the control room lit up with frantic gestures. We were out of time, out of script, and definitely out of control. But out on the stage, under the hot white lights, there were only 2 men, one question hanging in the air, and a silence so tense I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears as Keanu slowly nodded. And Jimmy opened his mouth to ask the question that would change the night, and him forever. The question behind the lights. Jimmy's question sliced through the bright studio air like someone had suddenly switched off the laughter. "How do you keep your heart open?" he asked quietly. "After everything you've lost?" For a second, even the cameras seemed unsure what to do. The red lights on top of them glowed steadily, but no one moved. The audience, trained by thousands of sitcoms to expect a punchline, waited for the twist that never came. Keanu didn't smile. He didn't glance at the crowd for support. He just stared at Jimmy, his eyes dark and searching, as if he was checking whether this was a trap or a sincere invitation to step into dangerous territory. In my headset, the director barked, "What is he doing? We don't have time for this. Take the card question, take the card." But Jimmy wasn't looking at the cards anymore. He leaned in a little closer, elbows still planted on the desk, hands clasped, the way you sit across from a friend who's about to tell you something that might cost them a piece of their armor. The band had gone completely silent. Even the air conditioning hum felt louder than it should. Keanu exhaled slowly, the breath catching near the end. "That's not really a late-night kind of question," he said, half a laugh, half a warning. The crowd chuckled nervously along with him, grateful for any excuse to release the tension. But his eyes didn't match the laugh. They were already somewhere else, somewhere far behind the glossy backdrop and the skyscraper lights printed on the wall behind us. "You don't have to answer," Jimmy added quickly. People see the movies, the stunts, the memes. They don't see the person who still chooses to be kind. I always wondered how you do that." The control room wanted a joke. Our ratings wanted a joke. The script wanted a joke. But Keanu looked down at his hands, turning his ringless fingers over once, twice, like he was trying to remember who they belonged to. When he finally spoke, his voice had dropped into a lower, rawer register that I had never heard from him on television before. "I lost my best friend when I was 23, he said quietly. "Overdose. One phone call and suddenly the world you knew, it's just gone. Later I lost," he paused, the word catching in his throat. "I lost someone I loved, and a child we were waiting for. Different years, same feeling, like the universe took a sledgehammer to the inside of your chest but left the outside looking normal so everyone expects you to keep walking." The audience was utterly still. No coughing, no restless shifting. It felt like all of us were leaning forward in our own private ways, drawn toward the pain in his voice. Somewhere in the second row, the couple who'd been holding hands earlier unclasped them and sat rigidly straight, as if they'd stumbled into a sacred space they weren't sure they deserved to be in. For a long time, Keanu went on, I thought the answer was to close the door, just do the work. Punch, kick, fall off buildings, get back up. Let the bruises on the outside distract from the ones you can't show anyone. Action scenes are easy. You know where the hit is coming from. Real life doesn't give you that. Jimmy's face had lost its usual rubbery expressiveness. He wasn't performing anymore, he was just listening. I watched him forget about commercial breaks and segment timings, his eyes shining a little too much under the studio lights. His fingers tapped once on the desk as if he was fighting the instinct to crack a joke to rescue everyone from the heaviness. But he didn't. He stayed with it. So how did you change that? He asked softly. You don't seem closed off now. Keanu swallowed, jaw working. For a moment I thought he might shut down, shrug it off, steer us back to car chases and carefully rehearsed anecdotes. Instead, he lifted his gaze from his hands to the audience, scanning the faces he couldn't really see past the glare. His eyes glistened, and his lower lip trembled just enough for the cameras to catch it. One night, he said, I decided I was done, not in some dramatic way, just tired, empty. I got on my motorcycle, opened the throttle, and rode like none of it mattered. City lights, red lights, my own life, none of it. I didn't care if I made it home or not. He fell silent, that sentence hanging over us like a ledge. Jimmy's hand moved instinctively toward him, then stopped halfway, fingers curling against the wood of the desk. The director's voice in my ear faded into a nervous buzz I could no longer fully hear. Keanu took a shaky breath, eyes distant now, replaying a scene only he could see. But I didn't ride home, he murmured. I didn't even make it past the bridge. Something happened on that road that I've never talked about on television, and it's the only reason I'm sitting here right now. His voice broke on that last word. The camera caught the first tear as it formed, bright and fragile in the corner of his eye, just before it threatened to fall. And in that split second, with the whole world watching, he had to decide whether to wipe it away and put the mask back on, or let it fall and tell us what really happened that night. The bridge and the stranger. Traffic roared beneath his memory as he spoke, as if the sound of that long-ago night had bled through time into our studio. For a heartbeat, I forgot we were surrounded by cameras and cables. In my mind's eye, I could see him on that motorcycle, helmet visor down, the city smeared into streaks of orange and white. I took the bridge, Keanu said, eyes unfocused, because it felt like neutral ground. Not city, not home, just in between. Wind in my face, engines screaming, everything blurred. You know when you're so hurt you almost hope something will stop you because you can't figure out how to stop yourself. Jimmy nodded slowly, his throat moving as he swallowed. The audience didn't move, barely even breathed. The neon skyline behind them suddenly looked cheap, like cardboard pretending to be something real, compared to the rawness of what was happening at that desk. I don't remember the exact moment I lost control, Keanu went on. There was a truck changing lanes, a slick patch of road, maybe a bit of stupidity on my part. The bike tilted too far. It's strange, the things you think about when you're sure you're about to hit the ground. I didn't see my life flash before my eyes or anything poetic like that. I just thought, so this is it. This is where it stops hurting. He lifted his hand and traced a faint line across his forehead, showing us where an old scar hid beneath his hairline. I woke up on the pavement, staring at the underside of the world, streetlights upside down. My bike was a twisted mess a few meters away. I couldn't move my leg. My ribs felt like someone had replaced them with broken glass. I remember tasting blood and gasoline. The studio felt colder, as if the air conditioning had suddenly kicked into overdrive. Somewhere behind me, a camera operator shifted his weight and then froze, realizing even that tiny sound felt too loud in the silence. And then I heard a voice, Keanu said, his features softened just a fraction. A woman's voice, panicked, breathless, but gentle. She kept saying, "Stay with me, okay? Just stay with me." I thought she was an angel or something ridiculous like that. Turns out she was a nurse on her way home from the late shift. She pulled over when everyone else just slowed down to stare. He shielded his eyes for a moment, pressing the heel of his palm against his brow as if to keep the emotion from spilling out. When he moved his hand away, the tear that had been gathering finally escaped, carving a delicate path down his cheek. The cameras, hungry for drama, zoomed in. But on my monitor, it didn't feel like a viral clip. It felt like trespassing on a wound. She put her jacket under my head, called the ambulance, kept talking so I wouldn't close my eyes. I remember her telling me about her dog for some reason. Rufus. She said, "You can't check out yet, man. My dog still needs to meet you." It was such a stupid line, but it made me laugh. And in that moment, laughing hurt more than anything, but it also reminded me I was still here. I wasn't gone, not yet. Jimmy let out a shaky breath that almost sounded like a laugh, though there was no humor in it. "She saved your life," he said. "She did more than that," Keanu replied. "When you've lost people, when you've seen how fast a life can vanish, you start to believe the universe is indifferent, like it doesn't care who stays, who goes. That night lying on that cold road, this stranger decided my life mattered enough to be late getting home, to risk the traffic, to sit in spilled gasoline and hold my hand while I cried like a child. She didn't know my name. She didn't know I was an actor. She just knew I was a human being in pain. And she chose to be kind." His voice had grown steadier, threaded now with something fiercer than grief, something like gratitude or stubborn hope. Behind him, the giant fake skyline glittered like a reminder of how many stories unfolded in real darkness while we were busy pretending under studio lights. "The doctors said if she hadn't stopped, I might have bled out internally before anyone called it in," he continued. "I spent weeks in the hospital learning how to breathe without feeling like I was swallowing knives. Action star, unable to sit up without help." He gave a small, self-deprecating smile. "The tabloids wrote about the crash like it was just another cool scar for the movie posters. They didn't write about the nurse who stayed with me until my sister came. They didn't write about how she visited once, worried I might not remember her." He paused, staring down at the desk, fingertips tracing invisible patterns into the polished wood. When he looked up again, his eyes were wet but steady. "I remembered," he said. "I never forgot. I wanted to do something huge to thank her. Buy her a house, pay off every bill she'd ever had. She wouldn't let me. She said, 'You want to thank me? Then live like your life is worth the trouble.'" The words hung in the air, heavy and luminous. Somewhere in the back row, someone sniffled. Jimmy wiped at his own eye quickly, like he hoped the cameras wouldn't catch it, but they did. "So that's what you've been doing?" Jimmy asked, voice rough. "Living like your life is worth the trouble?" "I've been trying," Keanu answered. "I still have bad days. I still miss the people I lost so much it feels like a physical weight. But when I'm tired, when I want to disappear into the work or into anger or whatever darkness is handy, I think about her pulling over when everyone else drove past. I think about that simple, stubborn kindness. And I ask myself, what if I could be that for someone else? What if that's the real stunt, staying soft in a hard world?" The line hit harder than any punchline we had planned. You could feel it settling into people, echoing in places their own private losses lived. The show, for that moment, stopped being entertainment and became something closer to confession. Jimmy glanced at the nearest camera, then back at Keanu. "Do you know where she is now?" he asked carefully. "The nurse." Keanu's jaw tightened. The answer, whatever it was, clearly landed somewhere between gratitude and more grief. He hesitated, his thumb rubbing the edge of the desk, eyes flicking briefly toward the audience as if weighing how much more of himself he was willing to put on display. "I found out a few years ago," he said slowly, "that she passed away, cancer." The word came out like a stone dropped in water. "I never got to tell her how much that night changed me. I never got to say that every time I stop for someone on the side of the road, or talk to a fan a little longer than my schedule allows, or say yes to a movie that might give someone hope, a piece of that is because of her." His voice wavered, then steadied again with quiet resolve. "Sometimes I think she's still out there somewhere, stuck in traffic on her way home from work, radio on, tired, wondering if the small good things she does even matter. And I wish I could look into the camera and talk to her directly." Jimmy straightened, eyes lighting with a sudden idea, the kind that makes producers either very proud or very nervous. "Then do it," he said. "Maybe she's not here, but there are millions of people out there who feel exactly like that, tired, wondering if their kindness matters. If you had one thing to say to them right now, Liv, what would it be?" Every head in the studio turned, consciously or not, toward the main camera. Its lens stared back, a dark, unblinking eye reaching into living rooms and hospital beds and lonely apartments across the world. For a long heartbeat, Keanu just looked at it, breathing shallowly, visibly fighting for the right words. His hand came up to his chest, fingers curling into the fabric of his suit as if he needed to hold something solid. He swallowed, lips parting, ready to speak straight into that invisible crowd of exhausted, wondering strangers. And at that exact second, the red wrap now, light above the camera, began flashing furiously, and the director's voice exploded in my headset, shouting for a commercial break we were already late for.